Welcome to the College Admission TV podcast. Join us for insights from education leaders on today's academic landscape. We are excited to have as our guest Annie Gemmell, Vice President of Enrollment of Mitchell Hamline School of Law in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Well, hey, I always love to start out with your personal journey, and I'd love to learn who are the mentors that really helped shape your path.
Sure. I was thinking about this question, and it really goes back to my undergraduate days for me. So I have been in higher education now for about just over 20 years. But I started in higher education when I was a student in undergraduate. So I found a job in international education in that office when I was an undergraduate student. And I have kept in contact with many of the people that I worked with then all the way till now. I have found that, when it was just so great to have these people early on in my life that were interested in higher education. At that time, interested in international education, which I was really interested in. And we have kept up, and we have sort of followed each other's journeys along the way. International education itself also really, I think, shaped my journey too. It's how I ended up in law schools eventually. So I started out in undergraduate, like many students, not really knowing what I would do after college. And I was a first generation student, so I didn't have parents that really, could tell me like how I should be exploring careers or anything like that. And so early on, I found a job in this office on campus, and the people in that office really helped me start to explore in ways that I didn't know before. And so I ended up working in international education actually for a really long time after undergraduate. So I worked the whole time I was in undergraduate, and then I did a master's and also worked full time in that office, and then continued in that career for a while. So I was working with international students and with the immigration that they were working with. And that is what led me to law school, because I loved working with people helping to try to solve problems in immigration. So I went to law school, and then from there, because I have lots of experience in admissions and in higher education, I actually just stayed in the law school that I graduated from. So I was here and got to know the people in the admissions office when I was in law school, and have been here ever since. So that's been 10 years.
So what's the most common question that you get from prospective students?
Oh, the most common question. It probably depends on the type of student I'm talking to. So I will say, first of all, I work with two, I think, pretty distinct groups of students. So we have a blended program where students do online programming and on-campus programming. So it's less traditional. And then we have a very traditional on-campus full-time program, a law school program that looks very much like most law school programs around the country. And those two programs, I end up working with really different groups of students. So in the blended program, we have students who are non-traditional in all sorts of ways. So they are coming back to school maybe as a third career. We have students ranging in age from 19 to 71, I think, right now. So really broad range of ages and backgrounds and across the country. And their questions for me are always start with like, can I do this? And how do I do this? It's much more based on just like, how does this actually work? Because it has to fit into a person's life. Students, and especially students that come from underrepresented backgrounds or non-traditional backgrounds, have like lots of different responsibilities that they're managing along with law school. And so it's about trying to figure out how it's going to fit within their life. So those are the questions we get. So it's, how does that program work? How much time do I have to be on campus? What am I doing when I'm doing the online programming? It's all the technical questions. But then I have another group of students that are in undergraduate school right now, and they are looking to go to law school right after they graduate. And they know they want to come full time. They know they just want to continue to be a student and do the traditional law school program. So those questions have a lot more to do with, what sets your school apart? What are the programs that, usually we're talking about the programs that they're interested that we have. So we have certain centers and institutes where we have lots of programming and classes for students that are interested in certain types of law. So we'll talk about that. So it sort of depends on who you're talking to.
Absolutely. So what is it that sets William Mitchell apart?
Yeah. So, and it's actually Mitchell Hamline now. It's Mitchell Hamline School of
Mitchell
Law.
Hamline. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Now, when did that happen?
So that was 2015. So
Okay.
so there was our predecessor schools were William Mitchell College of Law and Hamline Law School. And in 2015, we combined. And so we have been Mitchell Hamline School of Law we're going on 10 years now. I think what sets us apart, so first of all, our mission and, our focus on students who couldn't go to law school unless they had a program like what we offer. So a big part of what we do is we think about how to provide access for students that couldn't otherwise go to law school. That might mean a student that doesn't live anywhere near a law school, that is in a rural area. We care about that because those are also areas that have less legal services for people. And so we think about those kind of things a lot. So part of it is just thinking about and continuing to develop our programming for students that might not otherwise be able to do law school. So that's the blended program again. We have a part-time evening program, and we really focus on trying to help students just do law school in the way that they need to. So we think about wellness, we think about just the whole person, I guess, when they're doing when a student is in law school. So that's a part of it. I think also we have some really interesting programming. We have lots of different centers and institutes, including Center for Black Life in the Law, which is a very new program, and one of very few, well, it's the only one like that in the country, and one of very few that are looking at racial justice issues in the country. We also have a Native Law and Sovereignty Institute, which is also one of not very many around the country that focus on Native American law and sovereignty, and supporting tribes around the country and even in other places. So those are 2 of 9 centers and institutes. We have others as well. We have dispute resolution, health law, and other things like that. So I think it's our programming. I also think it's a real focus on just trying to support students who couldn't otherwise go to law school.
Well, and when you look at those distinctive paths, how do prospective students, how do they find out about those paths?
Yeah, so especially when we're thinking about just the types of programs that allow students to go to law school, a lot of times it's a Google search and it's like, how can, part-time law school, online law school, things like that. So it is like just trying to figure out again how to do it. But when we're thinking about like the actual programming for students, that's different. The students that come in understanding or thinking about one of those specific centers and institutes or a specific area of law, a lot of times, so they've already gone through undergraduate school. They've probably had a class where they've just touched on one of the areas that we provide at the law school, or they might have done an externship or an internship. Externship is a law school term. Internship is an undergraduate term, and they might have done one of those, and maybe with a public defender or somebody like that. So I think when it comes to specific areas of law, a lot of times it has to do with some experience a person has had, or an experience with with the legal system. You know, somebody might have had an experience maybe with family law that really impacted their life. Maybe they have a family member who has been in the criminal justice system, and they know that they want to work to maybe change things or help people who are in that position. So we get a lot of different paths that all lead here.
Well, absolutely. And how do you make sure that students persist? And I understand it's different than a 4-year undergraduate program, but I would imagine, whether it be online, hybrid, or on campus, there's probably challenges that students may face. Maybe there's certain things that are new, they're learning in a new way. How do you make sure that students don't get frustrated and stay the course?
That is like the key. That's the key to law school, I think, especially because law school is like learning a brand new language in the first year. Yeah, I mean, you come in and you might think you know what you're getting yourself into, but you don't really until you start in class. And so we do a lot of different things along the way to help support students. So we have a program, it's called Jumpstart, that we have for students before they even start law school. So it's geared towards students that maybe first generation may not have other sort of places to turn to just ask the questions you don't want to ask anyone else. So like, what do different terms mean that in law school, I think they think right away. And so we try to, we talk about it as sort of uncovering the hidden curriculum in law school and helping students really walk in that first day and feel like they do understand the language at least enough to get started. So we start right away. We're thinking a lot about students even before they begin law school. But then we have a really strong wellness programming that our dean of students works on. So this is a new concept in law school. So law schools are sort of behind the times when it comes to thinking about a whole person or wellness, things like that. But the dean of students here has really, really put a lot of emphasis on that for a long time. We have a wellness center. We have counselors. So we're an independent law school. So we don't have dorms or a bigger university around us. We're just one building and we just have law students. But we still have counseling services. And those counselors are, because we only have law school students, are really focused on the kinds of issues that law students are dealing with, plus other issues that come up in the world. But we do that. And then we put a lot of sort of time and thought into just the best way to teach students. So again, another thing that can sort of be different about law schools is they're really traditional. And so lots of law school looks exactly the same in a lot of places. There's something called the Socratic method where there's a certain way that students expect when they go into class, they will learn, and it will be getting cold called. So called out unexpectedly in class and then having a back and forth with your professor. We have some of that, but our professors have really thought a lot about whether or not there are better ways to teach students, whether or not we should be doing more writing, whether or not there are ways that students can be working together in other ways. I think the blended program pushed us in that direction even more quickly than it might otherwise have, because we needed to think about different ways to do things. But I think that and I've heard this from our faculty, our professors just are always thinking about the next best way to teach law students the law. So I think it's all those. It's sort of like helping students get started right away, working with and thinking about the whole person in wellness, but then also continuing to sort of evolve in terms of how we teach the law.
So how do you engage alumni, or do you also provide internships? I mean, how do students realize, hey, here's the path I can take and this is what I can become?
Yeah, that's a good question and a hard question for so many. We engage lost or alumni all the way through, and we have a lot of them. And we have a lot of them now around the country. So we work with them in all sorts of ways. The dean of the school right now is I think in California, meeting both with prospective students, and this is why I'm thinking a lot about it, but also with alums. So they're bringing prospective students and alums together at different events around the country right now. And because of our blended program, we have students and alums and prospective students around the country. So we start by trying to connect students early on as much as we can. When a student asks about certain areas of law, I oftentimes have alumni that can talk to prospective students about that right away. So they start thinking about it early. We have then alumni that work with our students from the first year on. So career services, off the career services office, they connect students all the time with alums when they're interested in specific areas. So that happens all the time. And then of course we have, as I said before, externships. So they're the same as internships, but for some reason law schools call them externships. So externships are an opportunity for students to go out and earn credit and also work. And because especially in Minnesota, we have so many alumni in so many different areas, we're able to connect students at law firms, with businesses that have our alumni, with the nonprofit organizations that do legal services, all sorts of things. So students are getting that experience in all sorts of different ways. We also have various job placement programs, but there are opportunities for students to do some interviewing right on campus sometime during the year for jobs after they graduate or jobs during the summer. So we're bringing people in to do that as well.
So are you able to apply your immigration background and experience to the job today? I mean, do you bring in a lot of international students?
So we actually don't. So law schools don't have a ton of international students, unless they have a big LLM program, which we don't. So we always have a handful of international students, and I love being able to continue to do that work. I actually, though, am so lucky. So the one thing that I did when I graduated law school, and as soon as I got licensed, I went straight to the legal aid office that is closest to the school and to my house, and I started volunteering with them in their immigration unit, and I do that still today. I always have one case going on all the time. Right now I'm working with people that I actually started working with right when I got licensed. I helped them get a visa. They were undocumented, and now I'm helping them to become permanent residents. And so the ability to support people and help people in that way is really, really an honor. And it's something that I'm so happy that I still have the opportunity to do. So I do use that. I would say though, in addition to that, it's like I tell people all the time, because I'm of course now a lawyer that doesn't really practice law. And I have students that come in and they're not quite sure. Maybe they want to be a lawyer, or maybe they want to do this thing that's sort of like next to being a lawyer, something that's similar, but it don't need to be. And I talk to them all the time about the fact that I think I am really a better professional for having gone through the program as well. I'm just better at my job. I'm better able to present my ideas. I'm better able to problem solve. I'm better able to really clearly think through the issues that I have to think through. So I am so thankful for my time in law school, and I really enjoyed my time in law school as well. That's why I'm still here probably. But yeah, so it's something that I do use all the time in different kinds of ways.
And now do most prospective students, I mean, are they thinking of what they see on TV? I mean, do they think trial lawyer? Do they think suits? This is what a lawyer does? Because obviously there's a number of different aspects to it and a number of different paths. But I guess what's that assumption for a lot of people when they do step in as far
Yeah.
as here's what a lawyer is?
I think there's for sure that group of students. I think there are for sure people that are thinking about that specifically and maybe even trying to act like that type of lawyer right from the very beginning, which is, yeah, I understand that. And there are people that do that, but it's a very small number of lawyers that actually end up in a courtroom. They're doing so many other things in so many different ways. So I do try to talk about that pretty early on with prospective students. But even better, I try to connect them with our faculty and our students right away, because our faculty and our students are probably the best at being able to say, like, yeah, like we learn these things, but remember, we also learn all of these other things, and there's all of these different ways and paths in law. It's interesting though, I was talking with a student that's about to graduate just a little while ago, and she was convinced that she was absolutely not going to be in a courtroom. She was going to she was going to be a transactional lawyer of some sort. She was going to be at a desk. She was going to be sort of behind the scenes. And then she did an externship in, I think it was with a county attorney. And she was in court, and she actually got to help present some cases in court. And she realized she thought it would just be so terrifying, really, and nerve-wracking, and she ended up loving it. And she ended up, I think, realizing how much it's not about the lawyer, it's about the client. And she realized that just this really neat way that she was able to support clients, and she loved it. So there are some students that are the complete opposite. They want nothing to do with what you see on TV, and they end up getting sort of close to it eventually.
So now, do you still teach classes?
I don't know. There was a time when I taught, I worked in the blended program teaching one of the legal writing classes, but I never taught classes really. I'm not on the faculty.
So what's the biggest difference when you look at legal writing versus business writing?
Oh, that's a good question. So I've not done a ton of business writing in my life. I've done theoretical writing. I was an English major before I went to law school. But law writing is very different than most other writing I've ever done. And I think it has a very specific structure that you learn your first year of law school. So you know going in that you're going to have to, have this introduction, this main part, this like couple different parts, and then a conclusion. You have to do it the exact same way every time. And within that bigger structure, you do the same thing on sort of small levels throughout. So you're going through things very systematically. You also have to cut out a lot of what might be fun for some people to do when they're writing. And so for some people, I think the hardest thing is that you don't get to have your personality in the writing in maybe the way that you would want to, because it does have to be in a very specific order and way. There's just a way of writing, and that's because that's what's expected. When you write a memo for a senior attorney in a law firm, if you are writing a brief or something for a judge, like, it has to be in a certain format. That's how they expect it. That's how they need it. So then that they can work through the ideas in the same way. And so there's a really important purpose behind it. But I think for lots of students, when they come in, they feel so constrained, and it's really hard to feel like you're able to get your points across in this way that is so specific.
So how do you prepare and make sure that students pass the bar?
So we have a actually really big academic excellence office. So we have lots of people in our office that work with students from, again, the time that they start law school, even a little bit before, all the way until they graduate and after. So the old way, I guess, the way that I got ready for the bar was you graduate, and then you do this separate program for a couple of months before the bar exam, and you buy the books and you go and you listen to lectures either online or in person, and you cram all the information in your head in those couple of months, because it is a 2-day exam and there's lots and lots of law to learn, or to remember, maybe learn and remember. Because if you didn't take some classes, you might never have learned it the first time. So that's the traditional way. We work with students. So we start working with them with a bar prep program actually right away when they start law school. So we get them registered before they start law school, and the admissions team works with academic excellence to do that. They have different assessments that they do early on just to understand where students are at in different ways. And then in the first year, we have, in addition to all of our doctrinal courses, the courses a student takes anywhere they go in a first year, so contracts and property and criminal law and things like that, they also are taking a course called legal methods. And so that again is another opportunity to just really start honing your skills, both for law school, but also to start thinking in the way that you need to think, and start looking at the issues or looking at the different types of law, maybe even doing some tests in the way that you have to for the bar exam. So they start that right away. And then we have various things that happen throughout the time that people are in law school. We have tutoring for people who want it and or need it. We have structured study groups where students who have done very well in different programs or in different classes will work with first-year students to do some structured study. And then later, when a student is closer to graduating, we have bar prep courses. And then we tutor students and work with students after they graduate when they're preparing for the bar. So all the way through, lots of different things. And the only caveat is the bar is changing really soon. So we are doing it all this way now, but we're already thinking about how it might change as the new bar exam comes along, which some of the students that are here right now will be taking it. So we're starting to think about that already.
So now how will it change? Is it just different questions, or is it structure?
It's structure. So my understanding, so none of us have a super, so every state does the bar exam their own way. And lots of states have signed on to sort of do the same bar exam. But now there's this new movement towards this other bar exam. So we'll see what happens in different states. But my understanding from the people who are watching this really closely is that it is going to be focused more on skills. So previously it was, they were, for me at least, it was 2 6-hour days. In the first day, you did various types of essay questions, 2 longer questions that were based on not on law, that it was less about the law and more about how you wrote and how you analyzed the law that they gave you. So they give you a packet of information and you have to produce something. So that's a skills base. So we had to do that, but it was only for half of one of our 6-hour days. Then we did essay questions having to do with specific areas of law. And the next day was all multiple choice. Much more focus on skills. So students will have to do a lot more thinking about, like, what would you do if you got this set of facts? What would you do if somebody came to you? And you'll still have to know the law and be able to talk about the law that they're bringing to you, but you'll also have to be able to say how you'll actually be working with clients, working with your colleagues in different ways through those questions as well. That's my understanding.
And now, do students, after they earn their law degree, and after they pass the bar, do students come back? Do students come back and get certifications or retraining?
Not I mean, so law, we all have to do continuing legal education. So we provide, and many, many different places provide a lot of continuing legal education, so that lawyers can continue to learn in that way. We do have some certificates, but they're usually less for students who, or for graduates, and they're more for people who are just interested in this one little teeny thing, either during law school or maybe not. We have some certificates that are for people who don't want to be lawyers and just want to learn this one thing. But I think, law, you really, you learn so much when you get out and you start practicing. And it's because there's, again, so many different career paths. There's no way that in law school you could prepare somebody for each one of those. So it's much more about preparing students for the skills that they probably need no matter what. But then when they get into the specific area that they're working in, that's when they will just continue to learn and keep up with the law that they need to keep up with in order to practice in that area.
So where do you see the School of Law in 10 years?
That's a good question. I really go back to thinking about how our faculty are always trying to sort of think about the next way to teach the law. So we are coming up on a 10-year anniversary, not only of the combination of the schools, but also of the blended programs that also started in 2015. And it's the 125th anniversary of the school. So we've had our iterations, but we've been around now for 125 years. And throughout, I would say, all of those 125 years, but then with the blended program very specifically, we've continued to sort of think about the next thing. So we were one of the first schools to really do clinical education. And so getting students into courtrooms and things like that. We were very early to do that. We were one of the first programs to have a part-time program in the evening. Then we were the first ABA accredited blended program. And so we've had these different iterations. So I can't imagine that our faculty are going to stop doing that kind of work. So I think that, they're always thinking about the next best way to teach students and provide access. And so I think it will be thinking about how the blended program might develop and change, how the different options that we have might influence each other. So I think that's where we're headed, but I don't have specifics beyond that.
Well, Annie, Gemmell, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate the insight.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really nice to be here.
Enjoyed this episode of the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll bring you another insightful conversation with a distinguished leader in higher education.